Hello everyone and welcome back to Haunted Hues. I know many of you tune into these videos to help you drift off to sleep, but before you get cozy, I thought it would be fun to hear from all of you. Drop a comment below and let me know where you're listening from around the world. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Now, let's dive in. I've always loved the beach. There's something magical about the sound of waves crashing against the shore, the salty air filling your lungs. But this beach? It felt different. It was like the ocean was calling out to me, whispering my name on the breeze. Thick fog rolled in every evening, wrapping everything in a ghostly shroud. It made me feel like I was the last person on Earth. I needed to escape. My breakup with Dylan had left me feeling lost. I was walking around in a fog of my own. My childhood friend, Leo, tried to cheer me up with his goofy jokes and endless enthusiasm. But nothing could shake the weight of loneliness pressing down on me. So, I rented a tiny cabin on this remote beach, hoping to find some peace, and maybe a little clarity. At first, the beach was my sanctuary. I spent my days wandering the shoreline, collecting seashells, and letting the sun warm my skin. But as the sun dipped below the horizon, the fog rolled in, and that's when the whispers began. They were soft at first, like the gentle lapping of waves. But soon, they grew louder, wrapping around me like a blanket of sound. It felt like the ocean was trying to tell me something, and I was both curious and terrified. One evening, while I was wandering along the beach, I stumbled upon a piece of driftwood sticking out of the sand. It was gnarly and twisted, covered in strange symbols that looked like they belonged in a fantasy novel. I bent down to inspect it, and that's when I heard it, a whisper, clear as day, calling my name. I whipped my head around, but there was no one there. Just the fog and the relentless waves. I should have turned back, but the whispers were like a siren song, pulling me deeper into the mystery. I followed the sound, my heart racing, until I found myself in a secluded cove I hadn't seen before. The sand here was darker, almost black, and the rocks jutted out like jagged teeth. In the center of the cove lay a shipwreck, a haunting relic of something that had once been magnificent. The wreckage was mesmerizing and terrifying all at once. It looked like it had been there for centuries, half buried in the sand, the wood splintered and rotting. As I stared at it, the whispers grew louder, swirling around me like a storm. I reached out to touch the wreck, and suddenly, I was hit with a wave of visions, faces of the lost, their eyes wide with fear, staring back at me from the depths of the waves. I stumbled back, my heart racing. I had to get out of there, away from the whispers and the ghosts. But as I turned to leave, I saw an old woman standing at the edge of the cove. It was Mrs. Eldridge, the quirky local who lived in the cabin next to mine. She often wandered the beach, talking to the seagulls and collecting shells. I had seen her a few times during my stay. Mrs. Eldridge had a way of looking at you that made you feel like she could see right through your soul. She approached me slowly, her voice shaky but firm. She told me that this beach was cursed, that the spirits of those who died in a shipwreck still roamed these shores, searching for peace. I felt a chill run down my spine. I had heard whispers of this before, but I never thought it could be real. She said the shipwreck happened over 100 years ago. A grand vessel named the Valiant had met its tragic fate in the fog, crashing against the rocks. Most of the passengers had never been found, their souls trapped in the limbo of the sea. I stared at her, my mind racing. I didn't want to believe it, but deep down, I felt something was off. The whispers were growing louder, more frantic, as if they were urging me to listen. I shook my head, trying to convince myself it was just a story. But as I turned to leave, the whispers began again, louder and more urgent. They were calling my name, echoing in my head until I felt dizzy. I fell to my knees, clutching my head, as the world around me faded to black. When I came to, I was back in my cabin, with Leo hovering over me, concern etched on his face. He had been my rock since the breakup, always trying to make me laugh and forget my troubles. I told him everything, the whispers, the shipwreck, Mrs. Eldridge's warning. He listened quietly, his expression growing more serious with every word. He urged me to leave, to escape this place. But I couldn't do that. I needed to understand what the spirits wanted from me. I had to find out why they had chosen me. So, I stayed, even as the whispers grew louder and more insistent. They followed me everywhere, whispering my name in my ear as I tried to sleep, echoing in my mind as I walked along the shore. It felt like I was losing my grip on reality, like I was being watched by unseen eyes. Then one night, as I stood on the beach, staring out at the endless fog and water, I heard it. A voice, clear and pleading, cutting through the whispers. It was a woman's voice, filled with desperation. I turned, searching for the source, but there was no one there. Just the fog and the waves. The voice called out again, begging for help. I didn't know what to do. I was just an ordinary person, not some kind of ghost whisperer. But I couldn't ignore the plea in her voice. So I did the only thing I could think of. I started walking, following the whispers deeper into the fog. I walked for what felt like hours, my feet sinking into the sand, the cold wind whipping at my face. Suddenly, I found myself back in the cove, staring at the wreckage of the ship. The whispers were deafening now, a chorus of voices, all crying out for help. I fell to my knees, clutching my head, as the world around me faded away. And then, just like that, I saw it. A vision, so clear and vivid it felt like I was there. I saw the Valiant, cutting through the fog, its passengers laughing and chatting, completely unaware of the danger ahead. Then, there was a terrible crunch as the ship hit the reef. I heard the screams, the cries for help, as the ship began to sink. I saw the passengers struggling in the icy water, their faces twisted in terror. And just like that, the vision ended. I was back in the cove, soaked with seawater, my heart pounding in my chest. I knew what I had to do. For the next few days, I dove into the history of the shipwreck, piecing together the stories of the passengers and crew. I learned about their hopes and dreams, their fears and regrets. Slowly, I began to understand why they were still here, why they needed my help. They had unfinished business, loose ends that needed tying up. So I set out to do just that. I tracked down the descendants of the passengers, sharing their stories and helping them find closure. I visited the families of the crew, offering them the peace of knowing what had happened to their loved ones. I felt like a detective, piecing together a puzzle that had been lost to time. As I did this, the whispers began to fade. The spirits were finally at rest, their souls freed from the burden of the past. And me? I found my own peace too. I realized that sometimes, the only way to heal is to help others heal first. That's exactly what I did on that haunted stretch of beach, where the whispers of the waves had once driven me to the brink of madness. In the end, I left the beach with a heavy heart but a lighter spirit. I had faced my fears, confronted the darkness that had haunted me, and emerged stronger. The beach would always hold a piece of my heart, a reminder of the whispers that had guided me to find my own voice amid the chaos of my life. As I drove away, I glanced back at the foggy shoreline, knowing that I had helped the lost find their way home, and in doing so, I had found my own. The waves crashed against the shore one last time, and for the first time in a long while, I felt free. The beach was serene under the starry night sky. The gentle sound of waves lapping at the shore was calming. I was Lisa, a mother enjoying a beach vacation with my family. The warm summer night felt perfect for a bonfire. Families gathered around, laughter filling the air. I felt cheerful, but deep down, I was anxious about my children's safety. My husband Mark was trying to lighten my worries. He always had a way of making me smile, even when I was feeling uneasy. Our daughter, Sophie, was curious and adventurous. She was drawn to the water, her laughter ringing out like music. I watched her run towards the waves, my heart swelling with love but also tightening with worry. The beach was beautiful. The moonlight danced on the water, creating a shimmering path. I wanted to enjoy this moment, but my protective instincts kicked in. I wanted to keep Sophie safe. I felt torn between wanting her to have fun and needing to protect her. As the bonfire crackled, I tried to relax. The warmth of the flames felt good against the cool night air. I roasted marshmallows with Sophie, her face lighting up with joy. But every time she ran towards the water, I felt a wave of anxiety wash over me. I could hear the waves crashing, and the laughter of other families echoed around us. It was a happy scene, but I felt an unsettling tension in the air, as if the night was holding its breath. As the night went on, I settled into the calmness of the beach. The laughter of families mixed with the sound of the waves. It was a perfect summer night. But then, just as I started to relax, I heard something strange. It was laughter, but it didn't come from anyone around us. It echoed from the water, high-pitched and eerie. My heart sank. I looked around, but no one else seemed to notice. I shook my head, trying to convince myself it was nothing. Maybe it was just the wind playing tricks on me. I focused on Sophie, who was still playing near the water's edge. I called her back, urging her to stay close. I didn't want her wandering too far. But the laughter grew louder, and it sent chills down my spine. It was unsettling, almost sinister. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. I glanced at Mark, who was still laughing and joking with the others. He didn't seem to hear the laughter. I felt alone in my fear. The shadows around us began to stretch longer as the night deepened. I felt the air grow colder, and the laughter echoed again, clearer this time. It sounded like it was coming from the waves. I tried to shake off the feeling, but it clung to me like a heavy blanket. I wanted to dismiss it, but my instincts screamed that something was wrong. I watched Sophie as she splashed in the shallow water, her laughter mingling with the eerie sounds. I felt torn. I wanted her to enjoy herself, but I also wanted to protect her. I felt my heart race as I took a step closer to the water, calling her back. But the laughter continued, growing louder and more chaotic. It felt like it was surrounding us, echoing in my mind. I felt panic rising in my chest. I couldn't ignore it any longer. I rushed to the water's edge, my heart pounding. As I reached the shoreline, the laughter morphed into cries for help. My breath caught in my throat. I felt a wave of terror wash over me. I looked out into the dark water, my heart racing. I could see shadows moving beneath the surface. I felt like I was losing my grip on reality. I called for Sophie, my voice trembling. I wanted to pull her back, to keep her safe. The cries echoed in my mind, pulling me closer to the water. I felt a desperate urge to save her, to protect her from whatever was lurking beneath the waves. In a moment of panic, I rushed into the water, feeling the coldness wrap around my legs. The laughter and cries grew louder, filling my ears. I felt like I was drowning in sound. I could see Sophie, her eyes wide with confusion. She was scared. I reached for her, my heart racing. I pulled her close, feeling the weight of the water around us. But as I turned to head back to shore, I realized that I couldn't see Mark. My heart dropped. I called out for him, but the laughter drowned out my voice. I felt a surge of fear. Where was he? The shadows in the water grew darker, swirling around us. I felt a sense of dread wash over me. I had to find Mark. I pushed deeper into the water, searching frantically. I could feel the coldness creeping up my body, making it hard to breathe. Finally, I spotted him, standing on the shore, looking out at us with wide eyes. Relief flooded through me. I shouted for him to come closer, to help us. But as I turned back to Sophie, the laughter grew louder, mocking me. It felt like the water was alive, pulling us under. I struggled to keep my footing, the waves crashing against me. I felt Sophie's small hand grip mine tightly. I couldn't let go. I had to protect her. I pushed forward, the water pulling at my legs. The laughter echoed in my ears, filling me with dread. Just when I thought I couldn't go any further, I felt the ground beneath my feet shift. I stumbled, losing my balance. I felt the water surge around me, threatening to pull us under. I fought against it, desperately trying to reach the shore. With one last effort, I pulled Sophie close and pushed through the waves. I could see Mark now, rushing towards us. I felt a surge of hope. We were almost there. I could hear the laughter fading, replaced by the sound of crashing waves. Finally, we reached the shore. I collapsed onto the sand, gasping for breath. Mark was there, pulling Sophie into his arms. I felt a wave of relief wash over me, but it was short-lived. The laughter faded into an eerie silence, leaving me shaken. I lay on the sand, trembling. I had faced my fears and survived, but I felt changed. I realized that not all laughter is innocent. I had let my guard down, and it had almost cost me everything. I looked at my family, safe but shaken. As the night wore on, I felt the weight of what had happened settle over me. I couldn't shake the feeling that something had been watching us, lurking just beneath the surface. I felt paranoid, as if the echoes of laughter would return at any moment. In the days that followed, I found it hard to relax. I jumped at every sound, every shadow. The laughter still haunted me, echoing in my mind. I knew I had to confront my fears, but the thought of facing them again terrified me. But as I watched Sophie play in the sand, I knew I had to be strong. I had to trust my instincts, to listen to the voice inside that told me when something was wrong. I had to be vigilant, to protect my family from the dangers that lurked in the water. From that day on, I was more aware of my surroundings, more attuned to the sounds of the ocean. I knew that not all laughter was innocent, that sometimes it had a darker purpose. I was determined to keep my family safe, no matter what it took. As we packed our things and prepared to leave the beach, I glanced back at the ocean one last time. The waves crashed against the shore, a reminder of the power of nature. I knew that I would never take my family's safety for granted again, that I would always be on the lookout for the echoing laughter that threatened to pull us under. In the end, I learned that fear was not something to be ashamed of, but something to be conquered. I had faced my fears and emerged stronger, more determined than ever to protect those I loved. And as I looked into the eyes of my children, I knew that I would do anything to keep them safe, no matter what the cost. The beach had taught me a valuable lesson. I had learned to appreciate the beauty of the present while remaining aware of the dangers that lurked in the shadows. I would carry this lesson with me, a reminder of the night when laughter turned to cries for help. As we drove away, I felt a mix of emotions, relief, fear, and gratitude. I had faced something dark and emerged alive. The laughter had faded, but the experience would stay with me forever. I had learned to trust my instincts and the importance of vigilance. The night sky was filled with stars as we left the beach behind. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the experience settle in my heart. I was grateful for my family, for their safety, and for the lessons learned. I knew that I would always remember the echoing laughter, a reminder of the fragility of life and the importance of protecting those we love. I glanced at Mark and Sophie, both safe and sound. I felt a sense of peace wash over me. I was ready to embrace whatever came next, knowing that I would always be vigilant. The ocean was a powerful force, and I was determined to respect it. As we drove into the night, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I would cherish every moment with my family and never take their safety for granted again. The echoes of laughter might haunt me, but I would face them with courage. I was ready for whatever life had in store. The beach had changed me. It had opened my eyes to the beauty of the present and the importance of staying alert. I was no longer just a carefree mother enjoying a vacation. I was a protector, ready to face the unknown with strength and determination. And as the stars twinkled above, I knew that I would carry these lessons with me, always. The echoing laughter would serve as a reminder of the night when I faced my fears and emerged stronger than ever. I was ready to embrace life, one wave at a time. The beach was deserted under the moonlight. It felt eerie. The sound of waves crashing against the shore was the only thing breaking the silence. I am Lily, a college student working as a night security guard at this once busy beach. Now, it felt abandoned. The old lifeguard's chair creaked in the wind, casting long shadows that danced on the sand. The air was thick with the scent of salt and nostalgia. I often imagine the lively days of summer, filled with laughter and sunbathers. But now, it was just me and the night. I felt a sense of isolation in my job. My friend Mark had joined me for the night shift. He was skeptical about everything, especially the stories I told him about the beach's history. He often rolled his eyes when I talked about the old lifeguard who mysteriously disappeared years ago. I loved the stories, though. They made the beach feel alive, even in its quiet state. As the night deepened, I sat in the security booth, watching the waves. The moon hung high, casting a silvery glow over the water. I felt a chill in the air, but it wasn't just the temperature. It was something else, a feeling that something was off. I shook my head, trying to push the thoughts away. I had a job to do. Mark was scrolling through his phone, mostly ignoring the surroundings. I glanced at him, wishing he would take this more seriously. I wanted him to feel the magic of the beach, the stories that lingered in the air. But he didn't care. He was here for the paycheck, not the history. The wind picked up, rustling the palm trees. I turned my gaze back to the beach. That's when I heard it. A distant whistle. It pierced through the silence, sending chills down my spine. I looked around, but there was no one else on the beach. My heart raced. I leaned forward, straining to hear it again. Then I saw it. A figure in a lifeguard's uniform sitting in the chair. I blinked, trying to convince myself it was just my imagination. But the figure was there, clear as day. The lifeguard's chair creaked again, and the figure seemed to shift slightly. I felt a wave of panic wash over me. I stood up, my heart pounding. I had to know what was going on. I glanced at Mark, but he was still engrossed in his phone. I took a deep breath and stepped out of the booth. As I walked toward the chair, the air felt heavier. The scent of salt mixed with something else, something unsettling. The closer I got, the more I could see the figure. It looked like a lifeguard, but something felt off. The uniform was old, faded. I felt a deep connection to the beach and its past, but I was terrified of what it meant. I wanted to turn back, to run away, but my feet wouldn't move. I was drawn to the figure, an inexplicable urge to find out more. I reached the lifeguard's chair and looked up. The figure was still there, staring out at the water. I felt a chill run down my spine. I wanted to ask who they were, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I just stood there, frozen in place. Suddenly, the figure turned its head slightly. I felt a rush of fear. Was it looking at me? I took a step back, my heart racing. I wanted to run, but I felt rooted to the spot. The figure seemed to come alive, moving closer to the water. I felt an urge to follow, despite the warnings of the old local who had shared the stories with me. I took a deep breath and stepped closer to the water's edge. The waves crashed against the shore, and the figure moved further into the darkness. I felt a mix of fear and curiosity. I had to know what was going on. I had to confront whatever this was. In a moment of courage, I shouted out, demanding to know who they were. The air grew cold, and the figure turned to face me fully. I could see the lifeguard's face now. It was pale, almost ghostly. The eyes were hollow, filled with sadness. I felt my heart drop. The figure beckoned me closer, and I felt an overwhelming urge to follow. I stepped forward, my heart pounding. The whispers returned, swirling around me. I felt like I was being pulled into the water, deeper and deeper. The cries grew louder, echoing in my mind. Suddenly, I was hit with a vision. I saw flashes of the lifeguard's final moments. I felt the panic, the fear. I saw the lifeguard trying to save someone, but it was too late. The water churned violently, and I felt the lifeguard's despair wash over me. I stumbled back, gasping for breath. I realized the truth. The lifeguard had drowned, trapped in the water forever. I felt a wave of sorrow wash over me. I wanted to help, to bring closure to this spirit. But how could I? I stood at the water's edge, my heart racing. I had to confront my fears. I had to help the lifeguard move on. I took a deep breath and stepped into the water. It was cold and shocking, but I pressed on. I felt the pull of the waves, the whispers urging me forward. As I waded deeper, I called out to the lifeguard. I wanted to let them know I was here to help. I wanted to bring peace to their restless spirit. The water swirled around me, and I felt the energy shift. The cries turned into a chorus of voices, pleading for release. I reached out, trying to connect with the spirit. I felt a surge of energy, a connection forming. I could see the lifeguard's face, filled with sorrow. I understood now. They were trapped, unable to move on. I had to help them find closure. With all my strength, I focused on the lifeguard. I wanted to let them know they were not alone. I wanted to help them find peace. The water churned around me, but I stood firm. I felt the energy building, the connection growing stronger. Suddenly, the cries faded, replaced by a sense of calm. I felt the lifeguard's presence shift, as if they were finally letting go. I saw a light forming around them, illuminating the darkness. It was beautiful, a warm glow that filled the air. As the light grew brighter, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. The lifeguard smiled, a look of gratitude on their face. I knew they were finally free. I watched as the light enveloped them, lifting them away from the water. I stood there, trembling but alive. I had faced my fears and helped the spirit find peace. The water calmed, and the whispers faded into silence. I felt a sense of closure wash over me. I had learned the importance of listening to the past, of respecting the stories that shape our community. As I stepped back onto the shore, I felt lighter. The weight of the night lifted, and the moon shone brightly above me. I glanced back at the water, where the lifeguard had once lingered. I felt a sense of gratitude for the experience. I had faced the unknown and emerged stronger. Mark was still at the booth, looking worried. I walked back to him, feeling a mix of emotions. I had confronted my fears and helped the spirit find peace. I knew I would carry this experience with me forever. The night wore on, and I felt a sense of calm settle over me. The beach was still, the waves gently lapping at the shore. I took a deep breath, inhaling the salty air. I had faced darkness, but I had also found light. As I stood there, I realized that not all spirits are malevolent. Some linger for a reason, waiting for someone to help them move on. I had learned to appreciate the weight of history and the importance of acknowledging the past. The moon hung high in the sky, casting a silvery glow over the beach. I felt a sense of peace wash over me. I had faced my fears and helped the spirit find closure. I was ready to embrace whatever came next, knowing that I would always respect the mysteries of the world around me. With each step I took, I felt more grounded. I had learned to appreciate the beauty of the present while remaining aware of the dangers that lurked in the shadows. I was no longer just a fisherman haunted by the past. I was someone who had faced darkness and emerged stronger. As I walked away from the pier, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I was ready for whatever life had in store for me. The ocean had shown me its power, and I was determined to embrace the adventure ahead. The echoes of laughter might linger in my mind, but I would face them with courage. I was ready to embrace life, knowing that I would always respect the mysteries of the world around me. The beach had changed me. It had opened my eyes to the beauty of the present and the importance of staying alert. I was no longer just a carefree mother enjoying a vacation. I was a protector, ready to face the unknown with strength and determination. And as the stars twinkled above, I knew that I would carry these lessons with me, always. The ghostly lifeguard would remain in my heart, a reminder of the night when I faced my fears and emerged stronger than ever. I was ready to embrace life, one wave at a time. The old wooden pier stretched out into the dark, churning waters. It creaked ominously with each gust of wind. I was Tom, a local fisherman, and I had spent countless evenings here. The air was thick with the scent of salt and decay. It was a crisp autumn evening, and the chill in the air amplified the pier's eerie atmosphere. Shadows danced beneath the pier, hinting at something lurking just out of sight. I had heard the stories, the tales of the pier's haunted past. They troubled me, but I tried to shake them off. Fishing was my life. I was practical and relied on my instincts. But the stories about this pier were hard to ignore. I had grown up hearing about the spirits that haunted it. My friend Alex always dismissed the tales as nonsense. He laughed at my superstitions. But deep down, I felt uneasy. The pier had a presence, something that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. That night, I set out to fish as usual. The moon hung low in the sky, casting a silvery glow over the water. I felt a mix of excitement and dread. I set up my gear, casting my line into the dark waters. The sound of the waves crashing against the wooden posts was soothing. I tried to focus on fishing, but the stories kept creeping into my mind. As I waited for a bite, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I glanced around, but the pier was empty. Just me in the shadows. I felt a chill run down my spine. I tried to laugh it off, telling myself it was just my imagination. But then I saw it. A shadowy figure lurking beneath the pier. My heart dropped. I squinted, trying to see better. The figure was dark and indistinct, blending into the shadows. I felt a wave of panic wash over me. Was it real? I shook my head, trying to clear my thoughts. I had to be imagining things. I was just being paranoid. But the figure didn't move. It lingered there, watching me. My hands trembled as I gripped my fishing rod tightly. I wanted to run, but I couldn't tear my eyes away from the spot. The stories flooded back into my mind. Tales of fishermen who had vanished without a trace, whispers of spirits seeking revenge. I felt my heart racing as I fought against the fear creeping in. I tried to focus on fishing again. I cast my line out, hoping to catch something, anything, to distract myself. But the figure remained, lurking just beneath the surface. I felt a chill in the air, and I could hear whispers carried by the wind. They were soft at first, but they grew louder, echoing in my mind. I felt like I was losing my grip on reality. Suddenly, my fishing equipment began to malfunction. My line tangled, and my reel made strange noises. I cursed under my breath, frustration boiling inside me. I glanced back at the water, and the figure was still there, watching. I felt a surge of anger. I was tired of being scared. I wanted to prove that I wasn't superstitious. In a moment of recklessness, I called out to the figure. I demanded to know what it wanted. The air around me grew cold, and the whispers turned into anguished cries. My heart raced as I felt a wave of fear wash over me. I was in over my head. The cries echoed in my mind, revealing the pier's tragic past. I saw flashes of fishermen, their faces twisted in despair. I felt their pain, their sorrow. It overwhelmed me. I stumbled back, my heart pounding in my chest. I was terrified. I had disturbed something that should have remained undisturbed. I turned to run, but the shadows seemed to close in around me. I felt trapped, like the pier was alive and aware of my presence. The whispers grew louder, drowning out my thoughts. I pushed forward, desperate to escape. The laughter morphed into cries for help, pulling me deeper into the darkness. Finally, I reached the edge of the pier, gasping for breath. I could see the water churning below, dark and foreboding. I felt a surge of adrenaline as I realized I had to confront my fears. I had to face whatever was lurking beneath the surface. With one last burst of courage, I leaned over the edge, peering into the depths. The water was murky, and I could barely see anything. But I felt the presence of the figure, watching me. I called out again, demanding to know what it wanted. The cries grew louder, echoing in my mind. I felt like I was losing my sanity. Suddenly, the water erupted. A wave crashed against the pier, soaking me to the bone. I stumbled back, fear gripping my heart. I turned to run, but the laughter echoed in my mind, taunting me. I felt a sense of dread wash over me as I realized I was not alone. I raced down the pier, my heart pounding. I could hear the whispers growing louder, surrounding me. I felt like I was being pulled under, drowning in sound. I had to get away. I had to escape whatever was haunting me. Finally, I reached the end of the pier, gasping for breath. I turned to look back, and the figure was gone. The water was calm again, but the laughter still echoed in my mind. I felt shaken, my heart racing. I had faced something dark and survived, but I knew I had to leave. As I walked back to shore, I felt the weight of what had happened settle over me. I realized that the pier held secrets, stories that were better left untold. I had disturbed something that should have remained buried. I felt a wave of guilt wash over me. In the days that followed, I found it hard to relax. I jumped at every sound, every shadow. The laughter still haunted me, echoing in my mind. I knew I had to confront my fears, but the thought of facing them again terrified me. But as I watched the sun rise over the water, I knew I had to be strong. I had to trust my instincts, to listen to the voice inside that told me when something was wrong. I had to be vigilant, to protect myself from the dangers that lurked in the shadows. From that day on, I was more aware of my surroundings, more attuned to the sounds of the ocean. I knew that not all laughter was innocent, that sometimes it had a darker purpose. I was determined to keep myself safe, no matter what it took. As I spent more time at the beach, I learned to appreciate its beauty. The sun shining on the water, the sound of waves crashing against the shore, and the scent of salt in the air. I realized that I could enjoy the beach while still being cautious. I could embrace the beauty without ignoring the danger. One evening, I returned to the pier, feeling a mix of fear and determination. I wanted to confront my demons. I stood at the edge, looking out at the water. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over everything. I felt a sense of peace wash over me. But then, the laughter returned. It echoed in my mind, sending chills down my spine. I felt my heart race as I looked into the water. I could see shadows moving beneath the surface. I took a deep breath, reminding myself that I was stronger now. I had faced the darkness before, and I could do it again. I leaned over the edge, peering into the depths. The water was dark, but I could feel the presence of the figure. I called out, demanding to know what it wanted. The laughter grew louder, morphing into cries for help. I felt a surge of fear, but I refused to back down. In that moment, I realized that I wasn't just confronting the figure. I was confronting my own fears. I had let the stories hold me back for too long. I had let the laughter control me. But now, I was ready to face it. I was ready to embrace the unknown. With a final surge of courage, I shouted into the darkness. I demanded to know the truth. The air grew cold, and the whispers turned into anguished cries. I felt the weight of the pier's tragic past pressing down on me. I saw flashes of fishermen, their faces twisted in despair. I felt their pain, their sorrow. But this time, I didn't run. I stood my ground, facing the darkness. I understood that the pier held its secrets, but I was no longer afraid. I had learned to appreciate the weight of history, the importance of acknowledging the past. As the cries faded, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. I had faced my fears and emerged stronger. I knew that I could return to the pier, to the ocean, without being haunted by the laughter. I had learned to respect the past and the stories that shaped my community. As I walked back to shore, I felt lighter. I had embraced my fears and learned from them. The pier would always hold a special place in my heart, a reminder of the darkness I had faced. But I was ready to move forward, ready to embrace life with open arms. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the water. I took a deep breath, feeling the salty air fill my lungs. I had faced the unknown and emerged victorious. I was ready for whatever came next, knowing that I would always respect the mysteries of the world around me. I glanced back at the pier one last time, feeling a sense of closure. The laughter had faded, but its lessons would stay with me forever. I was stronger now, more aware of the world around me. I was ready to embrace the adventure of life, one wave at a time. With each step, I felt more grounded. I had learned to appreciate the beauty of the present. I was no longer just a fisherman haunted by the past. I was someone who had faced darkness and emerged stronger. As I walked away from the pier, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I was ready for whatever life had in store for me. The ocean had shown me its power, and I was determined to embrace the adventure ahead. The echoes of laughter might linger in my mind, but I would face them with courage. I was ready to embrace life, knowing that I would always respect the mysteries of the world around me. I've always loved the beach, but there was something different about this place. It was like the ocean itself was calling out to me, whispering my name on the salty breeze. The thick fog that rolled in every evening only added to the eerie atmosphere, making me feel like I was the only person left in the world. I had come here to escape the mess of my life back home. My boyfriend had just dumped me, and I needed to get away from it all. My best friend Jake had tried to cheer me up, but I just couldn't shake the feeling of loneliness and heartbreak. That's why I ended up renting a tiny cabin on this remote stretch of beach, far away from the hustle and bustle of the city. At first, it was peaceful. I spent my days walking along the shore, letting the sound of the waves wash over me. But then the whispers started. At first, I thought I was just hearing things, but they grew louder and more insistent each night. It was like the ocean itself was trying to tell me something. One evening, as I was strolling along the beach, I noticed something strange sticking out of the sand. It was a piece of driftwood, weathered and worn, with strange symbols carved into its surface. I bent down to get a closer look, and that's when I heard it, my name, whispered on the wind. I whipped my head around, but there was no one there. Just the endless expanse of fog and the crashing waves. I should have turned back then, but I couldn't resist the pull of the whispers. I followed them, deeper and deeper into the fog, until I reached a small cove I'd never noticed before. The sand here was darker, almost black, and the rocks were jagged and sharp. And there, in the center of the cove, was a shipwreck. Or at least, what was left of it. I stared at the wreckage, mesmerized, as the whispers grew louder and louder. It was like the ocean itself was trying to tell me its secrets. I reached out to touch the wreckage, and that's when I saw them, the faces of the dead, staring back at me from the depths of the waves. I stumbled backwards, my heart pounding in my chest. I had to get out of there, away from the whispers and the ghosts. But as I turned to leave, I saw an old woman standing at the edge of the cove. It was Mrs. Thompson, the local eccentric who lived in the cabin next to mine. "I tried to warn you," she said, her voice cracking with age. "This beach is cursed, child. The spirits of those who died in the shipwreck still walk these shores, searching for their lost souls." I stared at her, my mouth hanging open. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "The shipwreck happened over 100 years ago," she said, her eyes fixed on the wreckage. "A steamship called the Valiant, carrying hundreds of passengers. They hit a reef in the fog and went down in minutes. Most of the bodies were never recovered." I felt a chill run down my spine. "But why are they haunting this beach?" I asked. Mrs. Thompson shook her head. "The spirits are restless, child. They can't find peace. And now they've chosen you to be their messenger." I shook my head, refusing to believe it. "No, that's not possible. This is just some kind of sick joke." But as I turned to leave, the whispers started again, louder and more insistent than ever before. They were calling my name, over and over, until it felt like my head was going to explode. I fell to my knees, clutching my head, as the world around me faded to black. When I came to, I was back in my cabin, with Jake hovering over me, a worried look on his face. "What happened?" he asked, his voice laced with concern. I told him everything, from the whispers to the shipwreck to Mrs. Thompson's warning. He listened in silence, his face growing paler with each passing minute. "You need to get out of here," he said, his voice shaking. "This place is dangerous." But I couldn't leave, not now. I had to know what the spirits wanted from me. I had to find out why they had chosen me. So I stayed, even as the whispers grew louder and more insistent. They followed me everywhere, whispering my name in my ear as I tried to sleep, echoing in my head as I walked along the shore. I felt like I was going crazy, like I was being watched by unseen eyes. And then one night, as I stood on the beach, staring out at the endless expanse of fog and water, I heard it. A voice, clear as day, cutting through the whispers. "Help us," it said, a woman's voice, tinged with desperation. I turned, searching for the source of the voice, but there was no one there. Just the fog and the waves. "Help us," the voice said again, this time more insistent. "We need your help." I didn't know what to do. I was just a normal person, not some kind of ghost whisperer. But I couldn't ignore the plea in the woman's voice. So I did the only thing I could think of. I started walking, following the whispers deeper and deeper into the fog. I walked for what felt like hours, my feet sinking into the sand, the cold wind whipping at my face. And then, suddenly, I was back in the cove, staring at the wreckage of the Valiant. The whispers were deafening now, a cacophony of voices, all calling out for help. I fell to my knees, clutching my head, as the world around me faded away. And then, suddenly, I saw it. A vision, so clear and vivid it felt like I was there. I saw the Valiant, cutting through the fog, its passengers laughing and chatting, unaware of the danger that lay ahead. And then, suddenly, there was a terrible crunch, as the ship hit the reef. I heard the screams, the cries for help, as the ship began to sink. I saw the passengers, struggling in the icy water, their faces twisted in terror. And then, just as suddenly as it had started, the vision ended. I was back in the cove, my clothes soaked with seawater, my heart pounding in my chest. I knew what I had to do. I spent the next few days researching the shipwreck, piecing together the stories of the passengers and crew. I learned about their hopes and dreams, their fears and regrets. And slowly, I began to understand why they were still here, why they needed my help. They had unfinished business, loose ends that needed to be tied up. So I set out to do just that. I tracked down the descendants of the passengers, sharing their stories and helping them find closure. I visited the families of the crew, offering them the peace of knowing what had happened to their loved ones. And as I did, the whispers began to fade. The spirits were finally at rest, their souls freed from the burden of the past. And me? I found my own peace too. I realized that sometimes, the only way to heal is to help others heal first. And that's exactly what I did, on that haunted stretch of beach, where the whispers of the waves had once driven me to the brink of madness. Dawn broke over the quiet beach. The sun peeked up, painting the sky in soft pinks and oranges. The sound of waves lapping against the shore was calming. I loved this time of day. The sand glimmered with dew, sparkling like tiny jewels. The air was fresh, filled with the scent of salt. But there was something else, too. Something unsettling. It felt like the beach was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. I was Jake, a beachcomber. I spent my mornings searching for treasures washed up by the tide. I was practical, always looking for things to sell. I felt a little jaded, often disconnected from others. I preferred the company of the ocean to people. The beach was my escape. My best friend, Mia, often encouraged me to find joy in life. She had a way of seeing beauty in everything. But I was focused on my finds. I wanted to make money. I wanted to prove I could find something valuable. This morning felt different. The beach was still and undisturbed, just how I liked it. I walked along the shoreline, my feet sinking into the cool sand. I scanned the ground for anything interesting. Shells, driftwood, or maybe something more valuable. I felt excitement build inside me. As I walked, I noticed something unusual sticking out of the sand. It was partially buried, glinting in the early light. My heart raced as I approached it. I knelt down and began to dig. The object was heavy and cold. I brushed away the sand to reveal a strange, rune-etched stone. It pulsed with energy, sending a shiver down my spine. I felt a strong urge to take it home. I picked it up, feeling its weight in my hands. It was smooth, but the symbols on it were intricate and mysterious. I had never seen anything like it before. I felt a thrill of excitement. This could be worth something. But as I held it, a wave of dread washed over me. I shook my head, trying to clear my thoughts. It was just a rock, right? I had found many strange things before. I could sell it and make some money. I decided to take it home. That night, I placed the stone on my desk. I stared at it, feeling uneasy. It seemed to glow faintly in the dark. I tried to brush it off, but I couldn't shake the feeling that it was watching me. I went to bed, but sleep didn't come easily. I tossed and turned, haunted by strange dreams. In my dreams, I saw shadows lurking at the edge of my vision. They whispered to me, but I couldn't understand what they were saying. I woke up in a cold sweat, my heart racing. I felt paranoid, like someone was watching me. I glanced around my room, but it was empty. I tried to convince myself it was just a dream. The next day, I felt drawn to the stone again. I picked it up, feeling its cool surface against my skin. I couldn't ignore the strange energy it gave off. I wondered if it had any real power. I felt a mix of skepticism and curiosity. I wanted to believe it was special, but I was also scared of what it might mean. As the days passed, strange things began to happen. I started to have more vivid dreams. I saw flashes of the past, images of people I didn't recognize. They looked sad and lost. I felt a growing sense of dread. I tried to focus on my beachcombing, but the stone was always in the back of my mind. One night, I woke up to find the stone glowing ominously. It pulsed with a light that filled my room. I felt a pull, an urge to touch it. I reached out, and as my fingers brushed against it, I was drawn into a terrifying vision. I found myself in a dark place, surrounded by shadows. I could hear the whispers again, clearer this time. They spoke of loss and despair. I saw glimpses of a family, their faces twisted in grief. A child cried out, reaching for something. I felt their pain, their sorrow. It overwhelmed me. I wanted to escape, but I was trapped in the vision. Suddenly, I was back in my room, gasping for breath. The stone lay on my desk, its glow fading. I felt shaken, my heart pounding. I realized that the stone was not just a find. It held a dark history, a connection to something tragic. I felt a wave of guilt wash over me. I had disturbed something that should have remained buried. I knew I had to get rid of it. I couldn't keep it any longer. It was too much to handle. But I felt a strange attachment to it. I had found it, after all. I wrestled with my thoughts, torn between my desire for success and the growing dread it brought. That night, I couldn't sleep. The shadows returned, creeping into my room. I felt their presence, cold and suffocating. I could hear the whispers again, echoing in my mind. I felt trapped, isolated. I was losing my grip on reality. The next morning, I decided to destroy the stone. I couldn't let it control me any longer. I took it to the beach, my heart racing with fear. I felt a sense of finality as I stood at the water's edge. I raised the stone high and smashed it against a rock. A surge of energy exploded from the stone, knocking me back. I fell to the ground, gasping. The light enveloped me, blinding me for a moment. I felt a release, as if a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. The whispers faded, replaced by the sound of waves crashing against the shore. I lay on the sand, shaken but free. I had faced something dark and emerged alive. I looked around, taking in the beauty of the beach. The sun was shining, and the air felt fresh. I realized I had learned an important lesson. I needed to appreciate the beauty of the present and let go of the past. As I walked back along the shore, I felt lighter. I had faced my fears and conquered them. I understood now that some things are better left alone. The past holds its own secrets, and I didn't need to uncover them to find happiness. The sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the water. I took a deep breath, inhaling the salty air. I felt a sense of peace wash over me. I had faced the unknown, and while it had terrified me, it had also changed me for the better. I was grateful for the experience, even if it had come at a cost. From that day on, I approached my beachcombing with a new perspective. I learned to appreciate the little things, the sound of the waves, the feel of the sand beneath my feet, and the beauty of the world around me. I realized that life is not just about finding treasures, but about enjoying the journey. As I walked away from the beach, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I was ready for whatever life had in store for me. The ocean had shown me its power, and I was ready to embrace the adventure ahead, one wave at a time. I glanced at the horizon, where the sun dipped below the water. The sky was painted in vibrant colors, a beautiful reminder of the day. I felt a smile spread across my face. I had learned to let go of the past and embrace the present. The beach would always hold a special place in my heart. I had faced my fears and learned from them. I was ready to embrace life with open arms, knowing that I would always respect the mysteries of the world around me. With each step, I felt more grounded. I had learned to appreciate the beauty of the present. I was no longer just a beachcomber searching for treasures. I was someone who had faced darkness and emerged stronger. As I walked home, I felt lighter. I had embraced humility and respect. I knew I would carry these lessons with me, not just for my time on the beach, but for the rest of my life. The ocean was a powerful force, and I was just a small part of its vast mystery. I took a deep breath, inhaling the salty air one last time. I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The forgotten stone was gone, but its lessons would stay with me forever. I was ready to embrace the adventure of life, knowing that I would always respect the mysteries of the world around me. The summer afternoon was hot and lazy. The sun hung high in the sky, casting long shadows on the ground. I was excited. I had always been fascinated by history, especially the legends about a mysterious island that appeared only during the lowest of low tides. This island was said to be full of ancient ruins and thick trees. I felt a pull to uncover its secrets. My brother Tom was with me. He was cautious and worried about my safety. I didn't care. I was passionate about this adventure. I wanted to prove myself. I wanted to find something important. After days of research, I found an old map in a dusty book at the library. It was faded and crinkled, but it showed the island's location. My heart raced with excitement. This was it. I was ready to explore. The day of our adventure arrived. The tide was low, and I could see the outline of the island in the distance. The air smelled salty and a bit musty. I could feel the island calling to me, as if it had been waiting for someone to discover its secrets. As we stepped onto the island, the ground felt soft beneath my feet. The dense foliage surrounded us, and I could hear the rustling of leaves. It felt alive, almost like it was breathing. I was thrilled. I wanted to dive deeper into the heart of the island, to find the ruins I had read about. Tom lagged behind. He glanced around nervously. I didn't care. I was on a mission. I pushed through the thick plants, eager to see what lay ahead. The trees were tall and twisted, their branches reaching out like skeletal hands. I felt a shiver run down my spine, but I brushed it off. This was an adventure. As we ventured further in, strange things began to happen. I heard whispers in the trees, soft and unclear. Shadows seemed to move just out of sight. I felt a knot of unease tighten in my stomach. Was I imagining things? I shook my head, trying to clear my thoughts. I was here to explore, not to be scared. We stumbled upon the first ruins. Crumbling stone walls stood before us, covered in moss and vines. I felt a rush of excitement. This was it. I was standing in a piece of history. I took pictures, documenting everything. Tom stood back, looking around warily. I could tell he was uncomfortable. I wanted to keep moving, to find more. I felt a sense of urgency. I had to prove that I was capable. I pushed deeper into the island, leaving Tom behind. The whispers grew louder, swirling around me like a haunting melody. I felt a chill, but I pressed on. Eventually, we reached the heart of the island. There, hidden among the trees, was a dark chamber. It felt foreboding. I felt a mix of excitement and fear. This was what I had come for. I stepped inside, my heart pounding. The air was thick, heavy with history. Inside the chamber, I found artifacts scattered around. Old pottery shards, tools, and strange symbols were etched into the walls. I felt a thrill run through me. This was incredible. I reached out to touch one of the artifacts, feeling the cool surface beneath my fingers. Suddenly, the ground shook violently. I stumbled back, panic rising in my chest. The island felt alive, as if it was awakening from a long sleep. I could hear the whispers now, clearer and more urgent. They echoed in my mind, filling me with dread. I realized I had disturbed something that should have remained undisturbed. Tom rushed in, his eyes wide with fear. He grabbed my arm, pulling me away from the artifacts. I felt a surge of anger. I wanted to stay, to uncover more. But the ground shook again, and I could see the walls of the chamber beginning to crack. The island was reacting to my presence. I felt a wave of uncertainty wash over me. Was I prepared for this? I had wanted recognition, but now I was terrified. The whispers grew louder, and I could see shadows moving in the corners of my vision. I felt like I was losing my grip on reality. We turned to leave, but the path we had taken was now obscured. The foliage seemed to close in around us, trapping us on the island. I felt panic rising in my throat. I had to get out. I had to escape. Tom and I pushed through the underbrush, the whispers following us, taunting us. I felt like we were being watched, like the island itself was alive and aware of our presence. I could hear my heart pounding in my ears. I had never felt so scared in my life. Finally, we reached the shore. The tide was beginning to rise, the water lapping at our feet. I felt a rush of relief, but it was short-lived. The island was sinking back into the sea. I could see the ruins disappearing beneath the waves. Tom and I barely made it to safety. We watched in horror as the island began to vanish. The whispers faded, replaced by the sound of crashing waves. I felt shaken, my heart racing. I had come seeking adventure, but I had uncovered something much darker. As we stood on the shore, I reflected on what had happened. I had been so eager to prove myself, to uncover the island's secrets. But I had learned a valuable lesson. Some secrets are better left buried. I felt a sense of humility wash over me. I had disrespected the history of the island, and it had reacted violently. The experience haunted me. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, of the shadows lurking just out of sight. I had experienced hallucinations of the island's past inhabitants, their faces twisted in fear. It amplified my uncertainty about my own sanity. As we drove away, I felt a weight on my shoulders. I had wanted recognition, but now I understood the importance of humility and respect for history. I had been overconfident, thinking I could handle whatever I found. But the island had shown me otherwise. The sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the water. I felt a mix of emotions, relief, fear, and regret. I had faced the unknown and emerged shaken but alive. I knew I would carry this experience with me forever. I glanced back at the water, where the island had been. It was gone, swallowed by the sea. I felt a sense of loss, but also a sense of closure. I had learned to appreciate the weight of history and the dangers of hubris. From that day on, I approached history with a new perspective. I understood that some stories are meant to remain untold, some places left unexplored. The Forgotten Island had taught me a lesson I would never forget. As we drove away, I felt lighter. I had embraced humility and respect. I knew I would carry these lessons with me, not just for my time on the island, but for the rest of my life. The ocean was a powerful force, and I was just a small part of its vast mystery. I took a deep breath, inhaling the salty air. I felt a sense of peace wash over me. I had faced the unknown, and while it had terrified me, it had also changed me for the better. I was grateful for the experience, even if it had come at a cost. The Forgotten Island would always hold a special place in my heart. I had faced my fears and learned from them. I was ready to embrace the adventure of life, knowing that I would always respect the mysteries of the world around me. I glanced at Tom, who sat beside me, still shaken but relieved. We had survived, and I knew we would carry this experience with us. The island had left its mark, and I would never forget the lessons it taught me. As we drove away, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I was ready for whatever life had in store for me. The ocean had shown me its power, and I was ready to embrace the adventure ahead, one wave at a time.